All right, guys, welcome back. We're on chapter 13. This is video 2 in The Barren Grounds by David A. Robertson. Okay, so we have Morgan and Eli are with Ochek, and they're gone through the forest, and they're now crossing a cavern over a tree, a fallen tree. Okay, so a tree has been felled. So if a tree has been felled, it usually means that it's done intentionally. Somebody pushed the tree over and they're using it as a bridge to cross over to the other side. And they're going to where it's Ochek's trapline area, okay, where he catches animals to eat, okay? So we'll just go to the top of page 113. That means beaver, Eli called over the expanse. Shut up, Eli. Morgan was busy with her thumping heart and shaking body, which wasn't shaking at all from the cold. The shaking wasn't helping her confidence in walking across the canyon. Looking at it now, the tree couldn't have been more than 2 feet wide. I might as well be tightrope walking, she thought. I can't do it, she said. You've got great strength in you, Ochek told her. This is a really bad time to talk like a fantasy character, she said. It's either come here or go back on your own, Eli said. Morgan looked behind her into the forest, and all she could see was night. No snow, no trees, just a black hole ready to suck her up into oblivion. Heights or the dark, it was the balancing of fears. She turned back. Okay, she said, I'm coming across. She took a deep breath, swung her leg over the trunk, and pushed herself to her feet. She spread her arms out for balance and took a step forward. Then another. At the very least, she was glad the weather was forgiving. She couldn't imagine doing this in the sort of wind she arrived in. Another step, followed by another. There may not have been wind, but the bark on the tree was slippery. For that, Morgan was glad Katie had given her moccasins. She could curl her toes around for some grip. You're almost there, Eli said once she was halfway across. Up until then, Morgan had kept her eyes trained on Eli the whole time and pretended that she was just walking along a fallen tree. Not a fallen tree stretched over a profoundly deep canyon. That way, if she fell, it wouldn't be to crush into a frozen river 100 feet below. It would be more like dropping into a snowdrift. But, prompted by Eli's encouragement, she made the mistake of looking down. Everything began to spin like a kaleidoscope, and her foot slipped. Morgan heard Ochek and Eli cry out. She screamed as she toppled over and reached out in desperation. Both her arms managed to connect with the tree. Her fingers gripped the ridges of the bark, but with the leather mitts, she couldn't hold on. I'm coming, Eli said. Morgan watched him get back onto the tree bridge and make his way towards her. He wouldn't get there in time. Her arms and hands were sliding off, her fingertips unable to find a good hold. She let go with one hand and shook her mitt off, then quickly grabbed onto the tree again. She did the same with her other hand. As soon as her skin was exposed to the cold, her fingers started to go numb and stiff. It didn't matter that she could get a better grip. Hurry, Morgan said. I'm trying, Eli said. Morgan tried to pull herself up, to force her fingers to work again, but her hands slipped off the bark. No, Eli shouted. Images flooded into Morgan's mind. The drawing, Ochek, Mrs. Edwards, her poem, their secret room, finally her mother, rocking her back and forth. Kiskatato sasso. Oh gosh, I've read that wrong. Let's go back. So she's falling. She's remembering all these things. Kisitsitotasso. 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 As she fell, Morgan reached out with one hand, and her fingers grabbed onto a frost crack. She dangled there, her legs and one arm free. She watched them as though they weren't part of her body. "Morgan, grab onto me," Eli said. She looked up to see Eli straddling the tree and extending his arm towards her. Her fingers were losing their hold. Her body was cold and tired, every inch of it. "I can't." Tears froze instantly against her cheeks. "Yes, you can. I'm not going back without you." Their eyes met, and he nodded at her. "You can do it." Morgan closed her eyes, gathered every bit of strength she had left, and thrust her arm through the air towards Eli's outstretched hand. Just as her other hand lost its grip, she felt her hand connect with his forearm. He grabbed hold of her with his other hand, then grunted as he pulled her up. Once her stomach was firmly against the tree, she rotated her body and sat up straight. She didn't even care that she couldn't feel her hands, but Eli must have noticed them. "Here," he took off his own mitts and handed them to her. "Thank you." She slipped her hands into them. "What about you?" "We can share." Eli started to back away towards an awaiting Ochek. Morgan slid forward on her butt right behind him. When they got to the other side, she'd never felt happier to have her feet on solid ground and tried her best not to think about going over the worst bridge in history again on the way back to Mizuwa. They all just stood there, looking at each other in a state of shock and relief, until Morgan said, "Please tell me we're almost there." The group broke out into laughter. "We're not almost there," Ochek said once they quieted. "We're here." Okay. So they have got to where they needed to get to. Now it was dangerous. Okay? They needed to help each other to get there. So Morgan almost fell into the frozen river. Thankfully, Eli came to help her and was able to help her. He got there fast enough. So now they are to the spot that Ochek wanted them to get to. All right, that's the end of chapter 13. We'll start chapter 14 on the next video. All right, guys, take care.